Chairman Schaefer.
Here.
Motion to excuse Mr. Jones.
Second. In favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Approved. Item 2 is the approval of motion summary from the meeting held October 20th, 2018, as recorded and transcribed.
Move for approval.
Second. In favor?
Aye.
And it is approved. Item 3 is time for public comments for anything that is not on tonight's agenda. So if you're here for something that's on tonight's agenda, we'll bring that up when it comes up. But if you're here for something else, now would be the time if you want to come forward and make comments. So, anybody here for something else? Okay. Item 4 is discussion and consideration of the installation of no parking signage on both sides of Glengarry Drive at the curve in Tinsley Bliss subdivision.
I'll start off on this one. We received a inquiry and complaint from the schools regarding parking along Glengarry, particularly the curve. School buses couldn't get in there. A school bus actually, I think, had to turn around. They couldn't even go down the street. This issue's been brought up back in 2013 also. And at that time, residents decided to go back and negotiate between themselves about not parking along the curb. So I'm not sure if there's new residents in the area. So we come back, we have the same issue. The roadway is only 28 foot wide. So there is issues with parking on both sides. And I know staff, we discussed it, potentially recommending no parking on both sides of the curve, if not at least one side of it.
And
Yes.
has there been notices set out on this?
Yes. In fact, you have several people here that would like to speak.
Okay. You said any questions before we open up public comments? Excuse me, just a minute, excuse me. Lisa, do you have any comments before we open it up to public comments?
No, I don't.
One additional thing I want to add, I forgot to mention, there have been 2 accidents here in 2018 with hit skip in that area around the curve. So there is a known issue based on the accident history too.
Okay, so if you want to comment tonight, we'll need you to come forward and give us your name and address for the record and take people one at a time.
Where do you want me to sit?
So that-
Here.
My name is Linda O'Rourke. I live at,
Would you mind turning that on?
yeah,
Go
Linda
ahead.
O'Rourke. I live at 207 Glengarry Drive. And I was the neighbor that complained back in 2013 because the buses couldn't get up and down that, around the corner to pick up my preschool. So we all agreed between 207 Glengarry and 189 Glengarry to not park on the outside curb where all the driveways are. Because there's actually only one parking space there, and there's a space in front of my house, which I don't have a problem not parking there. So it's worked really well. We had one of the house next to 189 sold to a rental company. It's a 5-bedroom house, and they've had 7 to 8 people living in this house. And so parking has become a nightmare there. They actually just moved out the other day, but it's back on the market to rent. So part of the problem is that house, and then there's a couple houses further down on Glengarry where there's teenagers, there's maybe 5 cars in the house. There's another house between the rental and that house that has 3 or 4 cars, and they have 2 to 3 cars parked out on the street at a time. My concern is, I live more on the straight section going into the curb, is that if there is no parking on either side, people are going to park in front of our house straight down the street. There's not going to be any place to park on that street at all. So we did have that gentleman's agreement, and we have all kept to it not to park on that inside curb. I think it needs to be extended down, because that's part of the problem is going into the curb, it wasn't quite extended far enough down. So if we went a couple more houses down, I think we could be okay. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to comment on this?
My name is Cassie Bear, and I live at 200 Glengarry. So I live on the curve. My house is the last house on Glengarry before you go onto the curve to hit the stop sign at Fieldcrest. When we built our house back in 1998, we built our house on that lot because we had that huge curve for on-street parking for family and things like that. So one of my concerns is when I have family that come over, Linda is correct that we've got houses, there's a bi-level that's literally across the street from me, and then the house beside it, they all have 5 cars. So they don't park in their garages at all. So they've got 2 cars in their driveway, and sometimes there's 2 to 3 cars out on the street. So they're parking in front of my house, and there have been times where my husband works third. He's come home and couldn't park in front of our house. So he's had to park even way down the curb, almost to the stop sign at Fieldcrest, which is where he had to park the other night, because people are parked in front of our house all the time. So that's one concern I have, is family coming and not being able to park it. I don't think it's fair for my family to have to park all the way on Fieldcrest, which is a full street away from us, especially with my parents being in that upper ages. And plus, we built our house for that reason. I am perfectly okay with making a no parking on the odd side of the street. But like Linda said, thank goodness the rental moved out. I have had concerns about the rental. I have talked about our HOA, but there were 8 single men living in that home. Each of them had a car. And in fact, one of the guys had an accident, I think last year, where they ran the stop sign at like 4 o'clock in the morning and hit a car. So they're gone, and there were, what, 2 cars, I think, parked from my house to the Fieldcrest stop sign today when I got home. So, and I did send this Chief Pijanowski a long email last week explaining, you know, my concerns, possible solutions. My daughter's bus could barely get through the other day, and I have a picture on my phone because the neighbor in the bi-level was parked almost 2 feet away from the curb, their van. And then the rental had cars parked about a foot away from their house, from their curb. And so my daughter's bus barely had enough room, maybe 2 or 3 inches on either side. And then I know when the kindergarten bus came through, that's the bus that said no, because they were coming from the opposite direction, so they couldn't get around the curb. That had nothing to do with the parking. It had everything to do with driver error of not being able to know how to park against the curb. And when I posted something on the HOA page for Facebook saying, hey, just be aware, this is a problem, the owner of the car was very defensive and was mad that I posted anything, and why didn't I come knock on her door at 6:45 in the morning for the, anyway, it's a big brouhaha. But I'm okay, and I think most of the residents are okay if we have the no parking on the odd side, but the even side, where it's just my side on 200, where the big curb is and all the parking is, would be a hardship for parking for a lot of us.
So when you say the odd side, are you talking about the outside of the curb or the inside of the curb?
Yes, where all of the houses are. There's no place to park there anyway, because the driveways are so close together. There's like one parking place on that curb on that side of the street. All of the parking is on the opposite side, because we are the last driveway before the stop sign at Fieldcrest and Glengarry. So if you...
Is no one using their driveways and garages?
Ours is being worked on. We have 3 cars. My car is in the driveway, my husband's car is, his one car is in the driveway, and then his car that he drives to work. That's my house right there on the curb. And that's my van in the driveway, and then my husband's Jeep. And then the red car that's further up past the stop sign, they have moved. That car's no longer there either.
And the 2 in the driveway back to back, that's the rental that had 8 cars.
We've got to keep this one.
Yeah, so the rental right there with the 2 cars in the driveway, that's the one with 8 cars. And they consistently had 6 to 7 cars parked on the street.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on this issue? And what is staff recommending on this?
At least parking restricted to at least one side. I know we originally put both sides. I don't know if Chief Donahue wants to speak to anything regarding.
I just want to comment that actually by the mailbox, you can see this where the fire hydrant's located at, pertaining go a little bit further north.
Okay.
Yeah, so
It's,
that's what we would want to make sure that we obviously have clear access, but if we could, and I think that's where the residents would want no parking on that side anyways. Am I correct on that?
Okay, where's the fire hydrant?
It's right by the,
The
right,
gentleman's agreement was right
Right
from
there.
here all the way around to the front of my house. And my front of my house was, and I'm further up, no one is parked in the front of my house for a long time. So that was our gentleman's agreement. The state trooper moved out, and there's new residents there, and I haven't met them. They just recently moved in.
But staff would be comfortable with this is start off with just painting it on the outside.
Try it.
I'm gonna let her.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Oh, that's basically, we live
but
in
maybe you need your name and address.
Oh, Sharon Rathburn, I live at 195, and we live beside that house patrol car. And we have 3 cars, so, and a short driveway, not very long, so we do need parking, and it is hard for my son to walk down the street in the winter and so forth, so. That's all.
Anyone else?
Chief,
Yes.
question for you. So with restricting parking on only one side, is there enough maneuverability for fire trucks?
With, obviously, when we look at our expanse, laying out a ladder truck with our outriggers, we're right at the 20 foot. So if you look at having a car parked there with the 28 foot, we're right there with that. I think when you look at what we've done here and some of the precedents that we've set in the neighborhood, we will make it work. We may have to do some cribbing of our trucks and so forth. Fortunately, this is not a real large, tall building. Not to say we wouldn't use the ladder truck, because obviously we would, especially with the lightweight construction here. But I feel comfortable at this point in time with restricting it to one on this. But I guess that would be on the inside, we'll call that, versus the outside where the fire hydrants are located at.
So would that be, which direction are we talking?
I think we're talking on the north side. West, yeah, with the corner.
I would just say we're talking about the outside of the curb, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
restricting it on the outside.
Yes.
North and west.
Okay. I'm ready to make a motion. A motion to approve the installation of no parking signage on the outside of the curb on Glengarry Drive at the curve in Kensington Place subdivision. Is that specific enough?
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
So we'll be restricting parking just on the outside of the curb.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Yes, thank you.
Item 5 is discussion and consideration of the installation of no parking restrictions for one parking space on Catherine Street at the new emergency entrance at Boardman Arts Park.
There's a request. The Boardman Arts Park has seen some increased activity, and right about where this arrow is, there's a gate that's been installed for access to the park when they bring things in and out. It also would allow us to get emergency vehicles in and out if necessary. But the request was just to restrict parking in that one place. Ms. Amadan is here if she would like to answer any questions as well. We're in favor. Staff supports the request.
Is anyone here to comment on this? I thought you would.
Hi, I'm Roxanne Amadon, I live at 161 West Winter. So at the request of fire and the police chiefs, as a result of having the Antiques Festival in the spring, we installed this additional gate so that there was access not just from the alley, but also from the open thoroughfare. So that's why we had that 15-foot gate added, or the school did, and so that we could use that for vendor ingress and egress, and then also ensure we had emergency access too. It worked out wonderfully. But it wasn't really much of a problem over the summer when we had most of our activities. Things are calming down now. So this is what we did for the Antiques Festival. We just kind of peeled it open and let it back. But now the gate's installed, and it's lovely. But the plan was to try to preserve one spot so we could actually get in if we needed to. We've had events there that have had as many as 1,400 people. The last one was over 300, so we needed an emergency vehicle. That might be problematic.
Thank you. Anyone else here to testify on this?
We did send invites to the residents on Catherine Street as well.
Okay.
Hate losing a parking space. I'm just wondering if, when there was an event, if it could be posted or if that's more trouble than it's worth.
We typically do post it during the events. We usually do one entire side of the street, but I think it's more if there's events where we don't restrict it, because there are some that are smaller that we don't restrict it.
I mean, yoga there. We have yoga in the park, and there are 20 people. And, we have exercise class in the park, and there are 10 people. And so we have big events and we have small events, but the ability to get around the building and the small gate on the alley side was difficult. So, and even when we don't have events, that's a good vendor entrance too. So ice comes regularly, people say band equipment and other things like that. So it's only an issue with students over the school year. They should be parking in the student lots anyway. That's a whole nother conversation.
And I can add, Councilwoman Keller, that it is a lot of trouble because we have to post no parking days in advance. So even like a 2-hour or 3-hour yoga event and someone gets hurt, John needs to respond. We had to go through a few days of posting just to close it for one event.
Okay, that
So,
makes sense. Thank you.
It's a good request.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I guess I'm the only one here to make a motion. I don't want to hog the motions, but I make a motion to approve the installation of no parking restrictions for one parking space on Catherine Street at the new emergency entrance of Boardman Arts Park.
I will second that. All in favor?
Aye.
And it's approved. Thank you. Item 6, discussion of the installation of a 3-way stop at the intersection of Rock Creek Drive and Willow Run Lane.
I'll take this one. We had a complaint from the school regarding issues and concerns with school-age children crossing there and with the amount of traffic that comes in and out of there during the school arrival and dismissal times. I did distribute a memo that we put together here in the past week. We did do a multi-way stop warrant analysis based on volumes. It does not warrant a multi-way stop. And you'll see at the end of that memorandum that we made some recommendations that this may be a good location for possibly some RFBs. There are currently static warning signs already in place for the school zone for the crossing. But as we all know, not always static signs do the job. So given the number of school-age children that cross there, there's usually about 15 to 16, I think, in the AM or PM. So we're greater than that 10, which is kind of like the threshold that we look at. So that was our recommendation, to add warning signs versus a multi-way stop, because it's only going to affect traffic when it's needed.
So where exactly are we talking this morning? That crosswalk right there?
Yeah, so you see the existing warning signs. They've been updated since, and they've got the downward diagonal arrow showing where the crosswalk is. But yeah, it's just the east-west crossing right there.
So I have children, one that has gone through Schultz and one that still goes. And this area is so dangerous that when I was dropping my kids off and picking them up, I would avoid this area altogether. And we created a new meet location where they had to walk, because I've had near misses at this place. I mean, I've had to so badly slam on my brakes that my foot would hurt for the entire day because it was that close. And you're shaking, I'm not going through there anymore dropping kids off. It is a huge problem. I was contacted by Mr. Woodworth, and the fact that there hasn't been an accident there is a miracle. And the way that there will be one is there will be a tragedy or something, and we can't take that back. So it is a huge, the whole traffic pattern all around Schultz and the morning to drop off and then after school to pick up is a problem. And there's not a whole lot that can be done, but if this can be addressed, I really think it's a priority. I appreciate the work that you did to expedite this and get it on this agenda. But this is a really scary place.
So Jessica, there's not many cars parked here now. Is parking on that street part of the problem in terms of people's visibility or that narrowing the roadway down? Are the cars typically parked on both sides when the kids are coming and
It
going?
may not show it there, but I thought we have parking restricted at the intersection.
We pushed it back a little further last year
Yeah.
Okay.
for this reason, just to create more visibility.
So from where that car is on the right there, is there any restrictions from there to the intersection from that car?
Should be your
I'm trying to see where
statutory.
this picture.
Just the statutory setback
Yeah.
from the sidewalk. So it's
You
not
should-
a.
I'm thinking it's right.
I'm,
I'm just curious if that would improve that in addition to these signals, if it, just the fact of keeping vehicles from being parked there, so you've got a little bit more roadway.
and I don't know, Lisa, you may be able to speak to this. Do they have crossing guards at this location at all, or?
Not, I haven't seen them. I mean, it's even a problem after you make the turn on Willow Run. It's a problem with kids kind of darting across the street there too. And even sometimes parents not wanting to get into the whole mess of going through the car line, just stopping and letting kids get out. And sometimes parents are letting kids get out on the wrong side of the road and then they're walking around. I mean, the whole thing is a mess.
Is there any way we could change where the drop-off is? Or how they pattern traffic in there?
Do we want to bring,
Yeah, yeah.
If you, sure.
Travis Woodward, Principal Schultz Elementary School. We looked really hard at the drop-off pattern. I think just because of where we're at, sitting back in the neighborhood is what we're running into. We had a big push where we've taken, at least if you see where it comes on Willow Run, the entrance to the left and the parking lot is basically where we're bringing everybody in.
Okay.
We've run 2 lanes around and through, and I've probably got anywhere from 6 to 9 staff in the morning, in the afternoon, manning parking lot alone, just to ensure that safety when they're coming across the second lane. We did put out a just a survey last year, I believe, looking for parent volunteers for that 8 to 8:30, and then again from 3 to 3:30 to see if we do safe routes to school. It didn't get a huge amount of support feedback just from availability. It's a hard time for our parents to get in there and do that, get training and do the crosswalk. I'm in a position where I'm kind of pinched for staff to put out the crosswalk. I've gone out there myself, especially when I've had neighbors share things about it with me, just to try to talk to the kids about how we be safe, making sure that we're paying attention to it, but they are 6 to 11. But no, we definitely are. We're working that piece. It's just, I think the way it's set up within the community there, we are really struggling with how to improve transportation, even with it flipping the entrance to the parking lot to at least keep our lineups. And it's going to back it up, go back into both stop signs, but at least to keep the flow. We had an issue with parents crossing onto the other side and waiting to get in to use the exit from there. With reminders and some visibility with officers, we're able to remind parents to just, you're going to have to take your time and let people go in and out of there. But we're definitely open and looking at it. We didn't kind of looked at using our bus alley as the entrance to the right. Do we make that the drop-off position? But then probably bring buses in the front of the building where people are parking and walking kids across, which is another safety issue that we run into. Some families, as long as they would communicate ahead of time with me, we'll let kids out the back, but I can't even supervise those pickups off of. I think it's like the 2 back on the back right, both of those roads, if they live off there.
Panic and Marvin.
Yeah, Panic and Marvin. We'll let the kids go out those back doors, but again, it's having that supervision to provide that safety. As I just want the parents to make sure they talk to me and give me something that says it's okay. And then we'll let them go out and meet their parents at those 2 locations. And I do know some set up the alternative where they just go like you're a walker, walk out, and then they were cobblestone dead ends at the end of the playground sidewalk. They'll walk out there and be one. Now I have at least probably 5 or 10 families that do that.
I feel like I started that trend because when I was down there, it was just me. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait a second.
Yes, yes.
Everybody else saw it and started, because it's really terrible up there.
It's tough. Joe may go into why I kind of brought it up again. Sure. It's been an issue. This is my 5th year. And I have, where that Willow Run that ends right across there is one of our parent volunteers. She's a retired teacher and grandparent to several students, Mrs. Love. And she's voiced to me considerably lots of times when she set up in the morning with her granddaughter that during those times, people are in a hurry to get somewhere, probably teenagers in high school to drive, just not paying attention and driving to or kids not paying attention and looking at it. It's been something since then. Like I said, I brought it up. I know we bumped out and did a study and bumped the no parking to increase some of the visibility. My biggest concern is, like you said, there's not going to be an issue until there's an issue and then it's catastrophic. And I appreciate all the reports that came through, and I understand the traffic patterns and how that goes. The protectionist in me, I just want to keep my 700 kids safe. I can't force them to do the speed limit. And the average speed, I think, came out at 30 or just around 30. And I can't force them to do the speed limit. If a stop sign there forces them to stop at a crosswalk, that's where I come at it from. That's the only way I can help guarantee it. I know the traffic parents, it's not my expertise, so I know what goes into that. I don't want us to be in a situation where it wasn't enough. Knowing that it is. If you look at it coming from the north down, I don't know if you can see that view. I know when I drive that, because I try to come different ways. I know the crosswalks there. I know the entrances there, and you don't see it. And it's that long stretch, that thoroughfare to get from Cobblestone out to 36 and 6 at Williams. You distracted driving, and some for our families, and they just don't think and realize about the potential there. So I guess that's why it is an issue. I think it's going to crosswalk within, at least that I'm familiar with, that doesn't have a full way within that little media zone. So that's part of what stands out to me too.
I'll just throw something else out there too. And I know it's not in your guys' safe routes to school plan, but another thing we could look at too is school zone, extending the school zone out onto that street. Because right now the school zone does not start till you turn onto Willow Run. And that could include flashers and stuff. My worry is if we do a multi-way stop, and we've experienced this over at Cobblestone and Hayfield, that it gives the false sense of security to people crossing out there. And then what if somebody doesn't stop? And then, we are affecting motorists outside the school hours too. So it's kind of one of those things we'll have to weigh both ways. So, but we do have other options with the flashers and everything. Obviously, there's a cost associated with that, but
Extending the school zone seems like it would be a good thing to do too, because then you get the flashing lights right during the hours that
we could install the flashing lights. You don't necessarily have to. You can just use the static signs, but in this case, I think you'd want to do the flashing lights.
So if we did, would we do both? Would we have the flashing, make the school zone there on that main thoroughfare, and then also put the flashing light for the pedestrian crossing during the hours?
You could do both, yeah. And I would recommend if you did the school zone flashers, you would do them on Rock Creek. You'd encompass that road, and then you'd also do it on Applegate. So you're encompassing the entire school zone as you're coming in from all directions. So.
And then the pedestrian flashers at the crosswalk?
Mm-hmm. Kind of similar like your situation that we have over on Troy Road for Dempsey, where we have those within the school zone. You pass your school zone flasher, and then you get to the RFBs.
So part of my concern is, I noticed when I was in Europe, people step up to the crosswalk and Europeans stop. Americans just keep right on going, and they expect pedestrians to kind of leave their way between the cars. But when we're dealing with 6-year-olds, that's the problem, is that judgment of how fast that car is going and how long they have to get across that street, if they're even looking.
The way the law is written, you essentially have to step in front of traffic before you have the right of way. You have to establish your position in the lane, but do it in a way that the driver has enough time to stop. And it's not really written very well. And quite honestly, I've approached Representative Brenner over the last year and a half to try and get him to amend that in the state revised code, and I've gotten really nowhere yet. So I keep working on that because I think that's an issue that came up on Barrett Street when we had the accident up there, and it's common sense. If someone's at the curb, we get a lot of complaints. People are at the curb and cars won't stop, and it's because they don't have to. You have to be in the street before you have the right of way, and it just doesn't really make good sense to me. So we're trying to get that changed on the statewide level, but we're not getting a lot of movement yet.
I'm just worried about flashers. That will raise some awareness, but I'm still worried that a kid's going to think I've got enough space. I'm just going to chance it, and they won't have enough space.
Well, I think you have the same issue with the stop sign, and as Jessica said, we've seen that and I live on Somerset, and I have a stop sign at Kim Road that shouldn't be there, and was put there probably when the subdivision was built because the pool's on the corner, but cars don't stop. They drive through that stop sign, and not just a quick stop. They drive through that stop sign because most people don't. It isn't intuitive that is a natural stop. So, and where it isn't. People are on that curve and they drive right through it. And I think that's one of the things when we started researching unwarranted stop signs years ago, is there's some studies out there that talk about the danger of putting up an unwarranted stop sign, and on top of the fact that it causes pedestrians to believe they have a safe zone, but cars tend to ignore them when they're unwarranted, and that might create a more dangerous situation. Mm-hmm. That's the one thing we're trying to weigh when we make these decisions. The other issues you have when you throw the stop sign up are really not pertinent here, but you have more engine noise, more braking noise, more emissions, and that's if it's not necessary, try not to do it. But the bigger issue here is the safety issues, and does it create a false sense of security when you should be looking and crossing safely?
I just add to, obviously, I would love to see a three-way stop, and I understand you guys have more evidence on that piece because it's the most I can do to keep them safe. I got 6 and 11-year-olds that sprint down my hallways. They know they're not supposed to. It's developmentally, it's what they do. I have them that they see a crosswalk, they think they're safe, and they go. And I have others, and I have a family that's here from the most recent incident that they were safe. There were 3 families traveling together and actually walked the bike to me, and somebody just absentmindedly driving out through there. They narrowly escaped it. So obviously I know I'm coming from an extremist end with this piece, and I appreciate anything. If you might get inside about flashing lights and anything to make it visible, or bright orange spray paint, then you're okay with me doing that. I just want to make sure that as much as we possibly can, or I'm able to do, I make sure it's visible. If we get flashers in, I'll teach the kids. I'll get out there and read them all. I'll take them out by class, and we'll practice how to hit those flashers and go. I do have a concern about, obviously, drivers not paying attention and knowing that they're already going through there that fast, but in a hurry, probably because they're going to be wanting to get home to get to that bigger road. And it's just been an issue, at least complaints and concerns of near misses. And like you said, I had accidents now for at least 2 or 3 years in different realms, whether it be medical or other. I don't want to go through that, and nobody does.
But I think the added piece, if we put the schools on in, now we're slowing traffic down to 20 miles an hour.
Yes, and presence helps. I know Officer Lucas was out there for the first couple of weeks setting parked car there to help. I know presence helps as soon as that phase away, but yeah, I would appreciate, obviously, anything we can do to help keep kids safer there. But it definitely is it's only a short amount of time during the day, but it's definitely busy. Lots of kids concerned for themselves, maybe not necessarily enough to make the right choices. Thank you.
Did you want to comment on this as well?
Yeah, it's conflict. So my name is Darwin Keeley. I actually live on Rock Creek Drive at 236. Just moved there a couple months ago, but I've actually worked in Tennis for years. So we've been driving here for quite a while. I'm actually surprised because I just realized as you guys were talking that Rock Creek Drive is not a school zone. I've actually thought it was a school zone this whole time. And so, and I see signs that signify school and automatically it's a school zone. I'm going to slow down. So I don't know that even enforcing a school zone or putting school zone signs up there is going to change that. At least I thought that was going to work away. But a couple of things. So my son was one of them, and I'll go into more detail on what happened there. But he was one that was a close call where I say it was chance that it wasn't an incident, but it wasn't a matter of skill or signs or anything else that stopped that driver from hitting. So a couple things. Looking at this intersection here, I'm a proponent for the 3-way stop for a couple of reasons. One, you can see the crosswalks coming across on Rock Creek Drive. And then you can also see the crosswalks I'm sorry, crossing Lowell Run. And also on what I would say that is the south side of Rock Creek Drive. Cars are coming in from that, let's say they're coming in southbound on Rock Creek. It's not intuitive in your mind to stop for a crosswalk that's on the other side of the street where one doesn't exist on the opposite side of the street. So you can reasonably see somebody coming through an intersection because when you're driving automatically in most cases. You don't think about when you're stopping for green lights or red lights or anything like that. But what's happening here is that, and that's just normal, it's just human function. But what's going on here is that people are not seeing a stop sign at the beginning of the intersection that they're entering into, or they're not seeing any kind of warning. So their brain is automatically telling them you can keep going. But all of a sudden you have a pedestrian crosswalk at the end of the intersection, and you have to make a quick decision. Also on the very fact that this is a curved road, so you're not even prepared to see that as it's coming through. A couple of other issues here is that this road is a very long road. So drivers are able to build up speed as they're coming down this road, but just over time, you have a long way to go. There's nothing really stopping you from building up that speed on a road that not only are a lot of kids crossing, but a lot of kids live on. Another problem that we're also dealing with here, just like you guys were looking at the last one, is that drivers are parking all along this road. So because drivers are parking all along this road, forgetting even this intersection, but kids are coming out at just all different places. Like for instance, if we stop buses, we put up signs for cars to stop behind and stop ahead to make sure that the kids don't get hit as they're coming up from behind cars. But we've got a road with cars that are parked all along, and there's nothing shielding them from the cars that are coming down at high speeds. We live on this road. The cars are coming at 35, 45, and even 55 miles an hour by our estimations. Not all the time, but sometimes, and there's just nothing stopping them from hitting them. And so we have a lot of issues and concerns with this intersection. I also think drivers, we teach them how to drive, but a lot of people don't exactly know who really has the right of way at a crosswalk. A stop sign is very clear, but at a crosswalk, even kids, my kids, you can teach them all that, but kids, it's just very questionable for them. Like, do I stop? Do I just start walking? Yeah, I know to watch both ways for the road, but I got this sign for telling me that I might be able to go. There's lines on the street I can cross. I'm not really sure exactly what to do, but I think I can go. And I think even drivers, people who should know the rules of the road, they don't always know the rules of the road. And so what's happening is they're not sure that they can, okay, well, I can keep going because nobody's there yet, but all of a sudden a kid comes up from behind a parked car. And so that's really what I want to say just about all of this here. I do think that you're going to have an incident. It was luck that my son wasn't one of them. It was just, split-second decision. We're talking about inches away. That we're not really talking about this and not as an incident, but we're talking about major injury or death at this intersection, and that was just inches. We're talking about a vehicle that touched my son's bike, so that's really where I'm coming from with this one. But that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chelsea Teal. I live at 236 Rock Creek Drive as well. Do you mind pulling up the street view? I have a couple things to point out, just to add on to what they both said. And when you guys put down the cables, you did the traffic study, correct? You said it was on about 30 miles an hour. You are right that often at that intersection it is about 30 miles an hour, but if you keep going towards our house, so is that southbound? Back towards Cobblestone, that is where it hits about 55. So, and what you were saying earlier was that it could impede traffic in the area. I think that would be a good thing because it's not just students that are crossing there. We have a lot of walkers, bikers, adults, seniors that walk all in that area. By the time you get to Cobblestone, people are flying. That's where they're hitting the 50, 55. There was a parent this morning I saw probably like the school was at 30, and I was standing outside watching my kids when they get to school. And so when you hit Cobblestone, there is a stop sign, and people roll through that as well. And there's a blind church. There is a park over there. So the whole area just becomes very dangerous without that stop sign there, or a three-way stop. So like I was saying, I just think it's beneficial to everybody. My kids don't have the same place to cross at three different spots. They can't cross there anymore. I don't know. Since the incident, they can't cross across the streets because cars are hitting 45, 40, 50 miles an hour, even in the morning. From our drivers, they can't cross, and then they can't cross at Cobblestone and Rock Creek. Am I saying right streets at Cobblestone?
You're talking about the dead end down here?
The dead end, yeah.
Yeah, that's
There's a house.
cobblestone.
There's a car that parks at the corner there as well, which they have a right to, it's, you know, it's their house and they're parking in front, but they're coming out and cars are rolling through that stop sign. Or maybe they're stopping too late. So I watched them get really close just last week after this whole incident. They almost got hit again. So I'm concerned about the whole area, and I do think the three-way stop would be good. Like he said, my son was the one that almost got hit. I was standing right there, and the problem was it wasn't a teenager, it was a mom. My mom we knew. She was leaving a school, coming from another direction, I think, from the other way around the other exit. She was a good mom. She was even on her phone. I saw because when she stopped, it bumped my son's bike. So she knew very well that she should be watching, but there's so many cars, there's so much traffic coming from different directions and kids walking all over that she just made a mistake. And so if a mom can do it, a mom that knows that she's picking up her own kids that are my kid's age, then how much more likely that somebody else could do it. And I was right there. When he started walking, he was right behind me and my daughter, and he was walking his bike, and it was clear at the moment. So there were no cars. By the time she came around, she hit the speed so fast, she was probably going 35 by the time she got to the intersection, and that's why he almost got hit. So it wasn't a matter of not watching or not being a stop sign at that point. I just think, so the awareness, I think the flashing lights would be great, I think the freeway stop would be great, anything we could do, because it is very, very dangerous, so. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
So I can speak to the three-way stop issue that we had in another area of my ward where I advocated very, very hard for the installation of a three-way stop. I can say that I was warned repeatedly by the experts. It can make things worse, and it did for quite a while. And I hate to say you were right and I was wrong, but you were. Because too many people, because it is counterintuitive to stop there, that they just don't. But then people who are there crossing are expecting the cars to stop, and it made it worse. So I don't want to make this worse. A stop sign is almost this false sense of security. We think because we put up the stop sign that people will naturally stop, because we would, but not everyone will. What do you think we could do to make, what's the safest option here?
Well, I think, I'm glad to hear you see that point, not to see the light.
I see it.
It is very frustrating. You think putting up a stop sign is the answer, but just like the example you gave at Cobblestone and Boulder, it's exactly why people don't yield at that stop sign, because they know it's highly unlikely someone's coming. So they have a false sense of security that it's okay to ignore a stop sign. You put a stop sign up primarily for a school zone, for it to be safe, especially when the children are there. Most of the time people go for the intersection, the children aren't there. They're in school or they're home, but they're not going through it. People start building up a sense of security of, I don't really need to pay attention to this because there's not children here. Then when you really want them to, when school's in or coming out, that's when you increase the risk. The school zone flashers, we have to expand the school zone, but not just with the static signage. But we could put the flashing signage with the back flashers. That's going to tell you coming down that road, not only that the school zone's active, but that you have to slow down 20 miles per hour. The RFBs that we've been putting in, those are the lights you see on Liberty Street, south by Wesleyan campus, have a high level of compliance when actuated. And it would take education of the students to say, this is how you safely cross. But because those are only actuated when someone's in the pavement, we have a much higher compliance of vehicles slowing and stopping for those when they're actuated. So they create a much safer zone when you need the zone to be safe, but they don't coach drivers during the rest of the time to start becoming familiar with the stop sign and then non-compliant because they don't see the need. So we tend to want to favor these newer tools we have and try to implement those to create this zone and add safety to it. Now, fortunately, I don't think we've had serious accidents there, and Schultz has been there since 96, 97. So we got a 20-year history there of students walking through the intersection in a neighborhood that for the most part has been fairly built out for an awful long time. So we don't have I hate saying this every time, we don't have accident history. That doesn't mean we want an accident to happen before we do something. These newer tools we use, especially with the school zones back flashers RFBs are great tools. They add a significant amount of awareness to motorists that something's happening in that space for them to become far more compliant at that time.
What's the timeline for that?
It's a budgeting issue primarily. We're putting the budget together now. We would probably on something like this bring forth something to full council and say, this is what we want to do. Resolution to put these devices in, and there's a cost at that time. Full council can give direction to staff, city manager to, find a way to put these in the budget.
Put it in the budget for next year, or could we do a supplemental for this year? Yeah.
You could have let Jessica speak in terms of timeline of installation.
Obviously, we'd have to order all the equipment, and it could take maybe 3 months to get that in, and then the installation on top of that. If we're looking at 3 school zone flashers, plus if we do RFBs, you got 5 foundations you got to get in, which we've been doing the screw-in foundations that are quicker. But I bet you're looking probably 3 to 6 months if we were able to get stuff ordered ASAP. So.
Well, let's get it on the agenda for the next council meeting and ask for an emergency.
We do the school zone too?
Yeah, we would extend the school zone because it's technically, I think, 300 feet within the property lines. We'd have to extend it out onto Rock Creek, which we've done similar things with Dempsey. So we just put a resolution together for that. And then I can get updated costs. I should have pretty firm costs on the school zone flashers, the RFBs. I'll want to get some new costs on that. But
Can you ballpark? I mean,
RFBs, if we would install them, you're looking about $7,500 to $10,000 for the equipment. School zone flashers, I want to say about $7,500 a piece, and that would be if we install in-house. So times that by 3. So probably what?
20, for total, $30,000 to $35,000 to put all the equipment out there.
what do you think?
I'm good with it.
I think we could get support.
Yeah.
I just wish we could, we don't have them sitting around. I wish we could just get it done faster, but.
I can talk with, Pathmaster's got the state bid, so I'll talk with them and see what they've got in stock. That way they can set aside, we go through them with our school zone flashers, and then TAPCO has the state bid for the RFB. So I'll check with them and see what they have in stock, make sure they can hold us some items. So. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So would you want us to bring forth, obviously resolution to define the changes, supplemental appropriation, do we want to do that at the following council meeting, assuming council passes resolution?
Yeah, our next meeting's a week from tonight. Yeah, it would be.
So we've only got a couple pieces of this. One would be to expand the school zone. One would be our
Right, it'd be this expansion of the school zone and the addition of school zone flashers and RFB at the intersection. And a partner piece of legislation or following piece would be a supplemental appropriation to fund the purchase of those things.
What are our rules for supplemental appropriations? Well, I think this would fall under the category of time sensitive.
Yeah, we've passed supplemental appropriations in single readings, for example, to provide fuel for city's fleet. It's up to council.
I can't imagine anyone saying no.
Right.
Okay. Next week then, Monday?
Yes.
Yes. So I move to pass the recommendation on to City Council to install, give me the proper name.
We're going to first expand the school zone
Expand the school zone.
onto Rock Creek.
to include Rock Creek Drive.
Okay, to include Rock Creek Drive and add pedestrian flashers.
Add the installation for school zone flashers
What he said.
and the installation of our RFBs. I won't give you the whole word. RFBs at the crosswalks.
What he said. And a request to pass it on to City Council for funding.
Yep.
Kim, have you got all that?
I do.
Awesome.
I will second it, I think. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for your comments. Hopefully we'll get this done as quickly as we can and make a difference down there. We appreciate coming in. Item 7, discussion to parking changes to Franklin and East William Street public lots.
Bruce, okay, we'll start with that one right there. This has to do with bringing in electric vehicle charging into the city and introducing that. And the location that we've identified is the south side of the BP parking lot, which is shown there. Bruce, can you bring up the next partner exhibit with that?
You want the changes or the, right here?
That's the one right there. So that's a close-up of that area. The reason it's selected is because we do have the lighting control center that has the appropriate power for electric vehicle charging stations. So really just the first part, just to introduce where we want to put them. There's still a lot to do. There's still a lot of research to do as to what company might be the best company and how exactly we want to charge for these. But what we're showing is potentially the 3 blue spaces are existing ADA spaces out there now. The other 3 green spaces are spaces that we would propose to put the electric vehicle charging stations in also. The bottom right ADA, we're also proposing that could potentially be electric vehicle charging too, possibly. So this actually would require 2 charging stations, each with 2 chargers on it, so 4 total. We could also have that and just put 2 public spaces in right now. But this is the location we want to put them. So really we're presenting this tonight to make sure there's some consensus that when we bring forth a full package of this is what we want to do and this is the cost to this, this is the location we would be. It may change slightly in terms of which spaces are going to be green, and green just means that's the electric vehicle charging. It may just be the 2 spaces on the top left and we not do the ADA space right now because there's nothing preventing a car with a handicap placard from using a regular space, including an electric vehicle charging. So some of the other things that we have to consider before we bring forth a full package to council would be how we want to recapture those costs, how we want to regulate those spaces so someone doesn't turn an electric vehicle charging space into their personal space all day instead of just being there to charge for so long and then moving to another space. Those are all things we have to think about as we put this together. So really the point tonight was to make sure that there's some consensus and some discussion on this, if this is the appropriate location. I know Councilman Jones had brought this issue up some time ago. So I know he's not here tonight to weigh in on any comments, but at least this is the location. Again, because we have the power, it's capital investment is minimal right here. We are working with an AEP grant to see what kind of cost. For what we're talking about right there is close to about $22,000 for the equipment, the operating and the warranty on the equipment. A lot of that could be offset initially by an AEP grant. So it does make sense to move on something now because the grant is there. Ultimately, from a bigger picture, we want to make sure the city doesn't get in the business of being a fuel distributor like gas stations. And so this industry is very fledgling right now. There's a lot of competitors that want to provide electric vehicle charging stations and a lot of different rules each of them have. We want to avoid becoming a purveyor of electric fuel, but it's a way to introduce at least into the community, being a little more progressive and at least saying have that. So our recommendation is that this is the location we continue to focus on versus other locations. And if we could work this out, it's very possible we could add these to Franklin parking lots, the East Winter Street parking lot, and other places. Even it could be Justice Center parking lot, can have electric vehicle space. But we're trying to get a feel for more how a program would work than necessarily worrying about just the infrastructure expansion of that.
It seems to me it makes sense to start with something like you see how much they get used before we start putting them in.
Right. Right. I would agree with that. We are working with ChargePoint right now only because they had approached us and we continue to work with them. ChargePoint is will become a third party. They build the equipment. We pay for it to have it installed, and they have their software. They monitor it, charge the fees, and then send checks back to the city, less their fees for whatever charges were collected that month, and we in turn have to pay AEP or whatever power provider there is for the actual metered cost of that particular unit used. But that puts us in the primary role of providing electricity to these vehicles, and we want to try to see if there's other options out there that we don't necessarily have to be a middleman, because as the industry grows, we don't want to be, in charge of 20 or 30 or 40 electric vehicle charging stations.
It would seem to me like AEP would be wise to just be a partner in this so that they just collect the
Mhm.
fees for their power that's being used in their, wherever their profit margin is, and take the city out, we would authorize the installation and
Right.
maintain, I guess, enforcement other than that.
We want to look at how some of the communities, including down in Columbus, are doing the arrangements for who's paying what. It is such a new industry and electric vehicles haven't really taken hold yet. So you have this gray area right now where we're not really sure what the regulations are going to be in terms of providing power. So that's why you see different providers of electric vehicles, for example. What's the guy out west who makes his own electric vehicle? Slipped my mind. Tesla. Tesla has their own, they have their own specific charging stations.
Yeah.
So I could have a Prius electric, I can't go up to a Tesla.
Was that right?
Yeah, so there's there's adapters that people are starting to buy.
Yeah.
There's all levels of electric vehicles now in terms of how you can recharge and what kind of vehicle do you want to be able to recharge it rapidly. Do you not care if it takes overnight? There's so many choices and variety right now in this new industry that's not very settled. And I always play on the side of caution, let's not jump in too quick why things are changing a lot, because we'll end up paying more when we end up changing everything in 2 years or 5 years. So at least I'm just trying to identify at this point locations to focus on so we can advance some of our research and analysis. And we may bring something back to council for, it would be in the form of some form of resolution that identifies certain parking spaces as for electric vehicle only parking. But at this point, we need a little bit more time to do some more research. And if this is the area, we'll focus it on that.
Okay.
Let's see what we have.
Okay. The last exhibit I have is the Franklin Street parking lot. Wow. I don't know if we can zoom up on that at all, Bruce. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so we talked prior, I think at councils, probably half a year ago or more, about providing centralized refuse collection in the whole North Sandusky block between Winter Street and William Street, because we have a lot of issues. Well, we have on an interim basis, I don't know if you've been in that and seen our dumpsters in there. Right where that kind of dashed red line is, we have 2 dumpsters set in there right now that we use to collect all the customers. There is a third dumpster on the top row where you see mostly white, couple blue. On the right-hand side is a green check. That's a third dumpster we have right there that services the health department. Those business owners are also petitioning us to just include all that in the central collection. So that's what we want to do, and we've piloted it now for a half a year. It's working very well. People are obeying the rules. It's not messy in the middle. So we want to go ahead and do the next thing, which is consolidate all 3 dumpsters in that area, and we have space for a fourth if we get more customers coming into that. It has eliminated some of the private dumpsters back there and some of the dumping too. So as part of that, we have to dedicate 4 spaces. We've used 3 of them right now. We have to dedicate 4 spaces in that area for the centralized collection. We can rework the parking then on the north side with additional to actually regain 2 of those parking spaces in the north row. So our net loss is just 2 parking spaces to do the centralized collection. We'll actually add a handicap spot on the north row, a van accessible handicap spot, and the small white hatched area lines up with a walkway into the Choffies. And then to the right of the white space of the check is what we call the shortcut alley. It takes you directly out to Winter Street. So it actually helps in the whole cleanup of that north area as well, makes it a little bit more pleasing. In terms of the dumpsters in the middle, if we go ahead and put the standard big wooden corral, we're concerned we're going to have 1 dumping over the edge of it and a mess. And 2, it's going to take even more parking to put a corral up. What we're proposing, and I'm working with Jackie and we'll be working with the Arts Council, is what we call an urban project, urban arts project, to actually leave our dumpsters out, but allow urban artists to, you can see the example right there, to paint them and become more of an attraction than a detraction. And so we'll purchase new dumpsters and put new dumpsters with clean surfaces, let them paint streetscapes or geometric scapes or flowers and things like that.
So we have some limits on what they can pay.
We'll have, we'll talk to them.
Nothing can go awry, right?
I'll work with Jackie to create just some rules, like for example, no political messages, no persons, personalities, really no words. We don't want messaging on them. We don't want any of that. That's just one example I pulled out. There's really hundreds online. If you just Google painted dumpsters or art and dumpsters, there's a lot of really creative people out there. And we thought the Arts Council would be a great place to help us out with that, with limits. And I think what we would do is say, here's a sketch of your work surfaces. Please provide us what you think so we can at least approve it. But it's a way to have a necessary service in the heart of that area, but actually become more of an attractive. People can stop and look at the artwork as opposed to saying it's just a dumpster. So tonight, I am presenting this tonight because we do need to bring a resolution that does make all these parking changes into both the north row and the center row right there. And want to bring a resolution before council to approve that. And we could do it by consent agenda, or we could have a full presentation, but that would be up to you. But that's what this is here for, is just to say if we want to continue with our efforts to centralize that refuse collection and provide some opportunities, we would need affirmation from you.
You know, I'm never big on giving up parking spaces.
I'm
Just
gonna
giving
park
up two
right here
spaces to
and,
gain,
I'm so sorry.
to solve another problem.
Yes.
It's worth it. And I like the idea that you're doing there, so it's not just dumpsters sitting in the parking lot. So, yeah.
Right.
I like it.
I'm sorry about that. I got a message from my credit card. Did you spend $1,800 in a women's clothing store? Reply yes or no. And I accidentally replied yes because I did buy stuff earlier today, but I didn't spend $1,800. So I need to call
If you
them.
need to
and
make a call,
does anyone care if I
fine.
just step out for 5 minutes?
Absolutely.
Because then I tried to reply back, no, and now they're saying, we're confused by your message.
You should probably unconfuse them.
Yeah.
It says reply yes or no or stop. And I said, no, wait, yes, no. Okay,
Why don't we take a 5-minute?
thank you.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
That's fine.
Okay, I apologize.
We've all been there.